It's not a happy day today when we are commemorating the death anniversary of Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar, one of the greatest emancipator who died little early, because we hardly see people dying in the 60s. And it was a great loss to the cause of humanity that his passing away ended story of a man who struggled himself so much. And believe me, he was one of the most educated person, highly educated person at that point of time in India. 2 PhD in economics. One from Columbia University, another from London School of Economics. 2 PhD. Bar at law from Gray's Inn. And the contribution he has made is some of the things which was highlighted by ma'am a little while ago. In fact, I should start from where she has left and then move on to several things, go back into the history when he made an entrance into the Indian political scenario, and then after his death, how things have been carried forward. So it's very interesting to. So first I will start with that period of 1942-46, before independence. He was made member of the Viceroy's Executive Council. So in a sense, Viceroy was the leading head of the state at that point of time during the colonial period, and the member of Executive Council were supposed to be the ministers. So Baba Saheb was given 5 ministries. Agriculture, labor, water resources, all these things, railways. So what he used to do as a railway minister also, he had access to a suite, railway suite, where he would lock himself inside and start working on several things. So whatever labor law exists in this country was prepared by Baba Saheb. So if you visit Ministry of Labor website, there is some material that what contribution Baba Saheb has made for developing the labor law in the country, as ma'am was pointing out some of the things that were started by him, like say maternity leave. It was actually suggested and included into the labor law by Baba Saheb only. It was for the first time it happened in this country. But you go and ask any of these leftist trade unions, they don't even know perhaps. Women organization also do not know what Baba Saheb actually did. So many things. All the rights that women are enjoying in this country were put into the Constitution of India by Baba Saheb only. No one else. No one else can take the credit. For several things, like say Reserve Bank of India, it was started by Baba Saheb. All these temples of modernity for which Nehru is given the credit, Bakranangal Dam or Hirakud Dam or whatever, all concept paper was prepared by Baba Saheb. There is a book actually written by Professor Sukhdev Thorat, that what contribution Dr. Ambedkar made about several things, including the water resources programs that Government of India had started during the British time itself, Zone Command in Bihar, Damodar Valley Corporation, all these things. And what should be, and not only developing these water resources projects, but people will be displaced. So how should they be rehabilitated? For rehabilitation itself, Baba Saheb suggested several things, but Government of India has not been sincerely implementing those things, rehabilitation policies. In fact, there is no rehabilitation policy. If you search through Government of India's website, different ministries, you won't even find them. So people are displaced. Internally displaced people are there in hundreds and thousands, and they have not been compensated. So they are living like a beggar in this country since ages. I mean, I will not go into those details because time is also a constraint. So what I was saying was that when we are observing the Mahaparinirvan Divas of Baba Saheb, at least those who know about him, those who have studied about him, as I have been talking about the similar issues even in the past, that Baba Saheb's contribution also remains on the margin. The kind of contribution, I mean, just for a moment think that if Baba Saheb was not a Dalit, if he was born into the so-called higher section of the society in the social ladder, he would have been placed next to Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh. But the very fact that he belonged to a Dalit community, he was born into that community, he struggled so much in his life, and then he manages to reach the highest level a person could dream about. So he goes to Columbia University, he finishes his education from there, then he moves on to London, where he gets admission into the London School of Economics, but he is not able to finish his second PhD, and midway he has to come back because the Maharaja of Baroda, his office informed him that his fellowship is over and he has to come back and report and work from there. We all know about these things, so I will not go into those details. What I am trying to point out here is that the kind of Baba Saheb's entry into the Indian political scenario started after the First World War. And then he started, like, making intervention, because at that point of time, if you have read the history of modern India, the colonial government was also thinking on the lines of preparing a blueprint for future political setup in the country. And that was a very opportune moment at that point of time for Baba Saheb to make intervention to ensure that any future political setup or even the current continuing political system should make enough space for disadvantaged communities like Dalits and Adivasis. So you remember, like, his submission to the South Borough Commission for adequate representation into bureaucracy, education institutions. He also, lobbied with the government, current government at that point of time, that Dalit students should also get fellowship and be able to go to abroad for higher studies and things like that, and several other interventions that he made during that point of time. Also, he started two newspapers, Janata and Bahiskrit Bharat, and 1927 Mahad Satyagraha, then Kalaram Temple Satyagraha, and then he realized that he need to change his strategy and he also needs to change his focus, especially after the failure of the Kalaram Temple Satyagraha movement. So he realized perhaps that for any new things to come up in this country or in this part of the world, there is a need for state to intervene. Without state intervention, things cannot change. That was very clear in his mind. And he was perhaps the only person who was trained in the best educational institutions of the world at that point of time. And he knew that any future political setup, or say the Constitution of India in future, should include provisions related to their socio-economic and political transformation. Because it is not enough Like during the debate in the Constituent Assembly, when Baba Saheb talked about special provisions for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, Nehruji immediately stood up and said, what is the need for special provisions when we have abolished untouchability in our constitution? So Baba Saheb immediately stood up and said, Nehruji, merely by writing in the constitution that untouchability is abolished, it will not go away. State has to intervene at every possible level to make sure that they get good education, they get discrimination-free good education. There are government programs and policies to bring them at par with others, because centuries of exploitation, centuries of marginalization has put the entire community to such low level in every sense of the term that they cannot even stand up and claim that I am a human being. So it's a struggle for humanhood, to reclaim that humanity, reclaim that humanhood. You know? So in that sense, it's very important to understand what made him different from others. I mean, if you read Gandhi, if you read Nehru, if you read any other important political leaders from Congress or even non-Congress or right wing or left wing, everybody is talking about liberating India from the British rule. But who was talking about liberating the Dalits, the Adivasis, the Sudra population people from the hold of the stranglehold of the Brahminical caste system? Who were talking? Buddha talked about it, Phule talked about it, Birsa Munda led a revolution, Ulgulan, against all kinds of exploitation. But how many people you see from the other caste, privileged caste background, who actually led a movement against the Brahminical tradition, which was putting a quarter of its own population in the most inhuman condition, All the dirty works, cleaning tasks will be performed by these people only. Nobody else will do it. As ma'am was saying, like it was as part of your duty that you have to clean the society, the dirt of the society. Nobody else will do it. It is their privilege to make things dirty, and it is your duty to clean it. So, the contribution that Baba Saheb made highlights the internal contradictions within the Indian society, that how can you be inhuman to your own service providing caste? These are all service providing caste, The Sudra population, who are called the OBCs today, they are all service provider caste. The Dalits, Adivasis, and they are given the lowest status in society. It's very strange that people who are doing the most important work in keeping the society clean, in providing essential services, they are the one who face discrimination, they are the one who face exclusion, and they are the one who face violence. Every time they try to break away from the tradition, they are even killed. Their women will be raped. They cannot live a life of dignity. So all these rights were denied, deprived, and they were forced to live a life worse than animals. So in that kind of scenario, here was a man who started in 1932 Independent Labour Party. I will not give you long lectures because I will be touching upon several things. So in brief, I will be mentioning those things. So he started Independent Labour Party. He saw that in Bombay Presidency and other urban areas, many Dalit labourers are working, and he started cooperating with the trade unions, left trade unions also. But then he realized very soon, in few years time only, that labour unions were also discriminating with the Dalit labourers. I mean, they will go together, hold the demonstration, fight for better rights for all the community people. But then again, when they are dining in the canteen, railway canteen or any other canteen, they will sit together. So they used to practice untouchability. So he gave up the idea of Independent Labour Party, and then around 1942 he formed All India Scheduled Caste Federation. Because I am talking about these things because I was asked also by the organizers of this program to highlight how Ambedkarite politics continued in the post-Ambedkar phase. But I am giving you a little bit of history that by 1947, Republican Party of India, Baba Saheb thought about it, but he was not able to start Republican Party of India. He died, and then his followers started Republican Party of India. But around the same time, if we read the history a little bit, he was also trying to have a coalition with Ram Manohar Lohiya's Socialist Party, which did not materialize. And several other alternatives he was thinking for the liberation of the entire set of people who have been living a subhuman life for centuries together. So at the same time, as in the initial stage also, the three slogans of liberty, equality and fraternity that was highlighted here, Baba Saheb was actually interested about these three things. And in fact, I think in volume 3 or volume 5, I am not able to remember exactly, he has written at one place that I did not take these slogans, liberty, equality and fraternity, from French Revolution. I took them from my master Buddha. And if you remember, educate, agitate, organize, what is this? And now I will give you the third thing, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And now try to understand, these are all same. Buddha, enlightenment, educate yourself. How will you educate yourself? If you are not educated, you cannot enjoy liberty. You can enjoy freedom only when you understand the meaning of freedom, liberty. So that is Buddha. That is educate yourself. That is liberty. Then agitate for what? For equality. Huh? Agitate for equality. And then organize for what? Sangha. Sangha means what? Solidarity life. So this is how we have to understand that how Baba Saheb was influenced by two philosophy, Buddhism and then pragmatism. His teacher was John Dewey at Columbia University. He is called the finest philosopher on pragmatism. And Eleanor Joliet has written in her book that when Ambedkar was invited by Columbia University to be conferred LLD after he drafted the Constitution of India, he shared with his friends, and he also used to share with his friends in the class, that if Devi were to die today, I will take the class from tomorrow. Because he was so much influenced by John Dewey that in every work that Baba Saheb has done, you can see the reflection of John Dewey, pragmatism. See, he was very clear. He was very clear that I am not a fool. I cannot stick to one point. If that is not practical, I will keep on changing. So at one point of time, you see, in State and Minority, which was supposed to be a memorandum to be submitted to the Constituent Assembly of India, that you should also consider these points while making the constitution. He talks about United States of India. Read it carefully. But then when he actually becomes the chairman of the drafting committee and drafts the constitution, he started talking about the British model of governance in this country, not the American model of governance. You know? So that dynamism, that if it is not possible, see to it that the larger interest of the community is protected. In state and minority, he suggested two things: separate settlement and separate electorate. But when he realized during the Constituent Assembly that these two things, two demands may not be accepted, so instead of clinging to it, let's make an attempt to secure political representation and political rights of the Dalit Adivasi community, so that it is not the best model, but at least it will ensure that there will be some representative. We welcome our other speaker, Advocate Nitin Meshramji. I know him since a long time. I am very happy to see him today here as a co-panelist. So he saw to it that the political interest of the Dalit community should be safeguarded into the future Constitution of India, because he knew from his experiences that Constituent Assembly of India will not accept separate electorate. So he left it to us, the future Dalit people of this country, of this subcontinent, that I am ensuring you the basic minimum rights in the Constitution. If you want more rights, better rights for your community, fight for it in the future. Don't, you cannot blame me for not doing this, for not doing that. So blame is on us that we have not internalized Baba Saheb in our life. Most of us. We cannot run away from these blame that we have not followed Baba Saheb, because what are we paying back to Ambedkar? Forget about society, the man who gave you so many things. Are we really paying back to him when he said, if you cannot take the car forward, don't take it backward? What are we doing? Are we not taking it backward? Think honestly. By not doing anything, by enjoying our life, by all the rights given to us by him in the Constitution, we are enjoying our life. But what are we going? What are we giving to our society? Forget about society. Let's start from our own relatives. How many relatives we are helping, supporting them, their children, to do better things in their life? Not many things we are doing. We are not even telling our children to study Baba Saheb. So it's time to reflect that how we are not doing. See, when Baba Saheb died, Dada Saheb Gaikwad was one of the tallest leader. He started land rights movement, and then many other socialist leaders also joined him. So for a decade we saw very important and very firebrand strong leaders. Dada Saheb Gaikwad was there, and there were many others in Maharashtra. Plus we had BP Maurya, who used to win from general constituency of Aligarh. A firebrand RPI leaders. In Punjab also very strong movement, Agra, UP, Western UP especially, very strong RPI. But then again within 10 years period time, they were all appropriated by the ruling Congress party. Some of them were made ministers, some of them were made even governor. Because I remember there was a governor in Bihar called R.D. Bhandare. He was from Maharashtra. the whole Ambedkarite background. So 60s, late 60s, early 70s, then you have the emergence of Dalit Panther movement in Maharashtra. Also gets reflected in Karnataka and many other states. Then by late 70s, the movement gets weakened. Then Kansiram Sahib emerges, starts Bomb Safe, and then later on in 1984 he starts Bahujan Samaj Party. A new phase starts in the Dalit politics, the Bahujan politics. Then all through the 80s and 90s we have seen, many of us are aware about the developments. But what is disheartening right now is that we have gone back to that pre-Kansiram days. And that's why we have gone back to the Chamcha age. Because the kind of leaders you see now, whether they are in the ruling party or in the opposition party, from our own community and from the Bahujan community, we feel that there is something missing again. And people are divided into several groups, people are divided into different political parties. Some attempt is made to bring them all together, but then again they go back to their own separate ways. So it's time to reflect upon many things, that why we have reached a level instead of going up higher in the future and building a better future for our children, our younger generation. We are still fighting not only to claim our rightful space in society, economy and polity, but also in other sense of getting representation. So I shall end by saying that things may look very disappointing, but there is a hope. Hope is still there. Like in the 90s, when I was doing my bachelor in Delhi University, there was a scholar who has come from US. He was taking my interview. That was the anti-Mandal agitation time. He said, "Umakant, you are one individual. How do you plan to take it forward, the kind of things that you are talking about, bringing a change, bringing a kind of revolution, and revolution should come first in the mind, because if your thoughts are not revolutionary, how will your action be revolutionary? So with that thing in mind, how do you move ahead?" So I told him, I may be one individual, but if I am able to light one candle, I can light 1,000 candles, and after 1,000 candles, I can light lakhs and lakhs of candles. So even if one person gets ready to come with me, or forget about me as an individual, with any organization, with any group of people, see how change becomes possible. Change is the byproduct of cumulative process. Several processes work simultaneously. It cannot be like one after the other, no. Otherwise centuries will pass away. That first you work for political empowerment, then you work for social transformation, and then next 100 years you work for economic emancipation. No. All the processes have to move on simultaneously. And the cumulative process, the cumulative effect of several processes going together simultaneously brings the change. So even few people here and there, they can make change. So that's why I am saying it's not a hopeless situation in that sense. There is still hope that better things can come in future while we are paying our tribute to Baba Sahib. One thing we should always be very clear. We should always be very clear. In this building itself, sitting outside, Professor Owen Lynch, who is no longer there, he died several years ago. He has made very important contribution in the discipline of anthropology and sociology. He was a professor at New York University. He came to Agra. He came to Agra for his PhD fieldwork, and he has written his PhD on Jatavs in Agra, The Politics of Untouchability, a case study of Agra. You should read that book. It's available in the library. It's a brilliant work. So I was having a discussion with him just outside this hall, on the steps with him. And what he said is very important for us, and with that I'll end here, because our last speaker will also speak after that. That he said, Umakant, discipline and dedication, these are very important things for the Dalit movement. But how will discipline be there when there is no honesty? Discipline cannot be there, dedication cannot be there if you are not honest. Not honest to your own self, not honest to your own community. So honesty is very important. And with honesty, you can start the process of wisdom. Because if you don't have wisdom, how will you get disciplined and how will you dedicate yourself? So these are very important things. While we who are the most fortunate one to come up to JNU and receive the best education that India provides to its student, it's our responsibility to pay back to society. If we are not paying back to society, I have given an interview about more than a decade ago. I would urge you to read that long interview. It's available on the internet. The title is, Don't Take Benefit of Reservation If You Cannot Pay Back to Society. Read it. That also has a history of UDSF, what all we did from its inception in 1991, and even after completing my PhD from JNU, what all I have done, even at the United Nations level and also otherwise. You will find all the details there. So I will not go into those details. I will end here by saying that I am happy. Don't worry that hundreds of people are not here today. Even 15-20 people or 40-50 people are enough to make a better future for our people in this country. Namo Buddhaya and Jai Bhim once again. Thank you very much.